It is Monday, January 13th, 2025. Chase, did you know that today is the 7-year anniversary of the Minneapolis Miracle?
You know, with the wild card and divisional rounds kind of intertwining and, adding more games and stuff, I kind of got lost in the sauce that was today. That was an unbelievable play. Unbelievable play of all time.
It's one of those you remember where you were when it happened moments. Chase, do you remember where you were when that happened?
I didn't even watch the play when it happened. I was at Flying to the Hoop in Dayton watching some big-time high school basketball, and then the entire arena erupted. It was like, oh, my God, the Vikings won on a Hail Mary, or not a Hail Mary, but, the Minneapolis Miracle. Everybody's like losing their mind.
That is a very good reason why you did not watch it as it actually happened. I commend you for that. Flying to the Hoop. This is the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night podcast. My name is Alex Frank, otherwise known as Frankie. He is Chase Younts, my co-host, the host of the Cut to the Chase podcast. Speaking of which, we're recording this on Monday at about 6 o'clock, and there's still one more wild card game to go. So the history of this is, if the Vikings, and by the time you listen to this, they may have already beaten the Rams, but if Minnesota plays Philadelphia on Sunday in the divisional round, it will be 7 years to the Sunday, Chase, that those two teams played in the NFC Championship game in 2017.
Wow. That is
won by the Eagles 38-7.
Yeah, that was the Nick Foles game right there, man.
It was the Nick Foles game. That was the first of two Nick Foles games. Two championship games, if you will. All right. So, I'm on Twitter this week, Chase, this weekend during the wildcard games.
Yep.
And I'm seeing people complain, oh my gosh, these games stink. Are we going to get a good game? And, well, the Bengals should be in. See, we told you the Bengals should have been in. Well, maybe they just needed to wait all day for Sunday night, because for the third straight year, Chase, the Sunday Night Football game of Super Wildcard Weekend delivered us a fantastic game. The Washington Commanders beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20, and also by a doink, if you will.
The divisional doink.
The divisional doink. The Commanders win their first playoff game in 19 years. 19 years. January 7th of 2005 was the last time they won a playoff game prior to last night. Sunday night in Tampa, Florida. Zane Gonzalez, 37-yard field goal. By the way, he hadn't been kicking regularly, according to Mike Tirico, since 2021. So just another fun development in what's been a fun, unexpected season for the Washington Commanders. Chase, that game last night had so many twists and turns and big plays. What's the one play that stands out to you?
There's so many that could jump off the page. I think there was a time frame in the fourth quarter when the Commanders drove down the field, and then the Bucs defense held them at the 3-yard line. They got the stop. The Washington's one of, if not, they are the best fourth down conversion team in the National Football League inside of 3 yards to go. And it was shown last night, but the Bucs got the stop. And then Baker Mayfield just mishandles a jet sweep exchange and fumbles it. And then the Commanders pay off on it. The Bucs go down the field. They also have another bad snap exchange and everything else. But the play that got me the most was the two big-time third down conversions from Jaden Daniels on that final drive of the game. One pass that he threw that there was an immense amount of pressure, and he threw that ball right over the middle. It was a great – I think it was Diami Brown, I think, might have caught that pass. I can't remember if it was him or –
what a game he had last night.
He had an awesome game, a career game to say the least. And then that final play when the final actual play when Jaden Daniels was stopped dead to rights, just like 5-6 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and somehow gets the first down. That was unreal. That was unbelievable how he was able to do that. And you're talking about, fun facts. Read the bottom. 4 of 5 winners on SNF on NBC wildcard games broke 18, 19-plus year playoff droughts.
Look at this. Look at this ticker that you have.
It's been
4
there.
or 5 winners on Sunday Night Football on NBC wildcard game broke 18-plus year playoff droughts. Okay, so the Commanders this year, the Lions last year, the Bengals the year before, even though that was a Saturday at 4:30 game.
Well, yeah. Well, you can say 3 of 5 actually, but the Bengals. You know
If
what
you
I
want
mean?
to go
Do
back even
relation.
further, Tampa Bay played on Saturday night on Sunday Night Football franchise in 2020 when they played Washington in an empty stadium, and that was their first playoff win since 2002.
That is also true. And the
So,
night after, the Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in their first playoff win since actually,
oh,
when
wow.
was that 89?
That would have been 1994.
95? 4?
Whatever. It was 20 plus years. Heck, that
Yeah.
was their first playoff game in 18 years.
Yeah.
Man, there's
It-
there's something about it. And if you want to go further than that, it was also Ben Roethlisberger's last game on Sunday Night Football in the 2021 playoffs.
That is true. And you think about it, who has been the announcer for a majority this year? Mike Tirico. The year before, Mike Tirico. Yep. The Hubbard Yard Dash, Mike Tirico. Yep. 2021, the Bengals break their Saturday 4:30 the playoff drought. Mike Tirico. Yep. The Bucks playoff drought that you're talking about on Saturday night. Well, nobody. Mike Tirico. I mean, he's been on some. And another weird thing, I think Mike Tirico.
In 2015.
Yeah, 2015. There you go. And it's insane. He's there breaking droughts, and at the same time, I'm pretty sure Tirico has called 3 Doink game-winning field goals in his career on NBC.
And I'm sure you can name them all.
Yes, we go yesterday. We go a couple weeks back in the Chiefs-Chargers game, and we go all the way back to Week 12 of 2016 when the Chiefs beat the Broncos on SNF.
Yeah, I remember that game. Do you remember who the kicker was in that game?
Ooh, please, was that Cairo Santos?
It was Cairo Santos. Okay. And you're good.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I wasn't entirely sure. I knew that
Sunday Night Football enthusiast Chase Younts is. I like to think I am. And then I met you. And then I, when you and I were discussing these at a basketball game, and I'm like, I think my memory's good. And then I see this guy, I'm like, I've got some work to do.
I wouldn't say that. I think we're pretty much on the same level as this.
I appreciate
perfect podcast for us. Perfect podcast for us to do.
Oh, no question about it. And going into Sunday Night Football's 20th season, and I mean, regardless, again, we're recording this on Monday night before the Vikings-Rams wildcard game, so we don't know who's going to Philadelphia next weekend on Sunday at 3:00 for the divisional round game, but whichever team does, it's going to be another great game. I mean, I truly believe that. And by the way, if it's Rams-Eagles, that's 3 games this weekend that are not only rematches of the regular season, but rematches of Sunday Night Football games in the regular season.
Mind blown.
Okay.
Mind blown.
Look at this. I mean, if you, by the way, the Eagles won their first Super Bowl on NBC. The Patriots broke a 10-year Super Bowl drought, which, yeah, that's a such thing.
Yeah.
The Steelers won their 6th Super Bowl on NBC. The Giants beat the Patriots again on NBC. I mean, I can go back and look at all the Super Bowls that have been on NBC, but my goodness. I mean, heck, the Cowboys had a playoff win drought. I think that lasted like 13 or 14 years that they broke in 2009. So
it's the Eagles, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can just keep coming. So going back to that was like a 5-minute tangent.
That was a long tangent.
That's like 5 good minutes on Around the Horn that they do with like Jeff Saturday or Kendrick Perkins. Anyway, for me, the play that turned the game around and that really was the big play in the game was the fumble recovery by Bobby Wagner early in the 4th quarter. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like when Tampa Bay got that stop on 4th and goal, I'm like, they can go down the field and at the very least kick a field goal and force Jaden Daniels to go down the field to tie the game, right?
Yeah.
But that fumble, it epitomized why the Commanders brought Bobby Wagner in. this defense, look, it's not a great defense by any means, but you look at the veteran leaders on this defense, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jonathan Allen, but particularly a guy like Bobby Wagner. All he's been throughout his career has been consistently great. In an era and century, Chase, where your great linebackers are Ray Lewis and Luke Kuechly, just to name a couple. Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, Patrick Willis. All right. Why isn't Bobby Wagner mentioned in those conversations?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know why. This dude, I know it's a video game, but like he was a 99 overall in Madden for multiple years, but nobody talked about him.
There's not a part of there's not a part of his game. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this graphic you're making. I mean, look at this command.
It's there.
I see it. I see it.
Hey, I got all these lined up. We're good.
Oh, and this is just the recap show. Just wait to the preview show later this week.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so Bobby Wagner makes that fumble recovery, and you could notice in Baker Mayfield's body language and in the entire feel of the game swung on that play, right? Baker Mayfield knew, I just cost my team something major. He knew, okay? I'm not going to pin the Buccaneers' loss in this game on Baker Mayfield. I thought he played well last night, even though the stats may not show it. I thought he looked poised. I thought he gave his team a fighting chance throughout the game. I mean, that drive he led at the end of the first half where he was barreling over defenders, where he was, saying, I don't care if Marshawn Lattimore's on Mike Evans. I'm going to him, and we're going to see what happens, and good for them. It worked. Yeah. But that play last night that Bobby Wagner made, Wagner was brought in to help this young defense come along. And you look at this defense, the secondary is so young, with guys like Mikey Sanderstill, who had a great college career in Michigan, as we know. And then you look at, the defense up front with the guys like Jonathan Allen, who's been around for a long time, but maybe hasn't been who the Commanders thought he was going to be when they drafted him a few years ago. Even a guy like Dante Fowler Jr., who's been around a few teams. Maybe he's now found some stability and leadership with a guy like Bobby Wagner. Here's a guy who, has played on the West Coast his whole career, played for the Seahawks for 10 years, then played for them again last year, played for the Rams 1 year. He goes to Washington. I remember thinking to myself, what is he doing? Like, why is he going there? Well, Now you see why. To make plays like that, to just have that veteran leader. I mean, if you want to know how good Bobby Wagner is, you want to talk about consistency. Bobby Wagner in his career. So his first year was 2012 with the Seahawks. In his career, he's a 6-time first-team All-Pro, including 5 straight years from 2016 through 2020. He's a 5-time second-team All-Pro, including the last 4 years. He's been to the Pro Bowl 9 times, including 7 straight years or 8 straight years from 2014 through 2021. He's led the NFL in combined tackles 3 times. He was the solo tackles co-leader in 2017. He was all-decade team of the 2010s. And, I mean, just look at his numbers every single season. He's had at least 100 tackles in each of his first 13 seasons. He's led the league again in combined tackles 3 times. Last year in his 12th season with the Seahawks, you didn't know how that reunion was going to go. Chase, he had 183 sacks or tackles, excuse me. I mean, what he has done in his career, both in terms of consistency and now you can even say longevity.
Yeah. This
guy is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and last night he made the play of the game. He saw, I mean, I don't know if I have to go back and watch the play again. I don't know if he was going to blitz. I don't know if he was going to drop back into coverage. As soon as he saw the ball on the ground, he said, "The hell with it, I'm going to get it." He did. That's what great players do. Great players go to the ball. The ball, the ball, the ball. And that's why the Commanders seized the momentum. And then, how good is Terry McLaurin?
Man, he's good.
Is he the best receiver that nobody talks about in the NFL?
Yes. Yes, no one. People are going to talk about him now. They should, but
they will.
He's still the most underrated football receiver in football, and it's unbelievable, man. I mean, 13 touchdowns in the regular season. He was fantastic. He finally he's finally got a quarterback. And it's Jaden Daniels of all people, which is just fantastic.
Thank goodness that he's in the NFC. Now, and I say that. I love watching Jaden Daniels play. Okay, I'm going to bring this to you. And I told a friend of mine this last night. If you watched his reaction on the game-winning field goal, and this is kind of going to our Jaden Daniels conversation. Again, Bobby Wagner on offense, or defense rather, leader. Terry McLaurin on offense, leader. 7 catches, 89 yards, touchdown last night for him.
Yep.
If you watch Jaden Daniels' his reaction, I don't know if you've seen it. He looked like, do you remember the 2016 national championship game between Villanova and North Carolina?
Yeah.
You remember Daniel Ochefu was mopping the floor for the official before their final possession?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Like, forget that you're tied in the national championship and Marcus Page just hit, at the time, the most ridiculous shot in the history of the NCAA tournament. Forget that for a minute. Forget that. He was just mopping the floor. You know.
It's crazy.
And Jaden Daniels last night was like, you would have thought that was just a Week 5 game.
Yep.
You thought it was just a Week 5 game at 1 o'clock against the New York Giants.
It's insane.
I don't mean to knock on the New York Giants.
Maybe a slight one, but hey, they got to figure it out. Giants got to figure it out.
Okay. Jaden Daniels. Needless to say, he's good. Are we about to get another graphic here?
No. I got you. No, just the scores. Just scores. You continue with that. Set the scene.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if you were like pausing because you're like, yeah, he's good.
Oh, I'm getting ready to hear what you got to say.
Okay. Jaden Daniels, you want to know how you know you have a great quarterback?
Let's hear it.
So last night I was thinking, because the Commanders are obviously going to play the Detroit Lions. And the Lions are the best team in not only the NFC, but the NFL.
Yep.
The Lions roster overmatches the Commanders. I'm here to tell you that right now. But you know you have a great quarterback when he's a rookie or in his second year, if he gives you a puncher's chance going into any game. Are you, if you're a Commanders fan and you're staring down the Lions, are you thinking you have a chance to win this game because you have Jaden Daniels?
Yes, there is a way, because again, like you mentioned, he's on their team. They controlled the clock yesterday. They had the ball for 37, 38 minutes last night. When you can control the clock and you can finish possessions with points, and more preferably 7 over 3, you're going to be in a ton of football games. And when you have a dynamic player like that, you have multiple running backs, Terry McLaurin, some guys that can step up at receiver, Zach Ertz at tight end, keeping Daniels clean, using his legs, that offense is dangerous. And who cares if it's similar to a college offense or whatever? I think half these offenses in the National Football League kind of had some similarities to some college offenses, because guess what? Quarterbacks can run. That's what it is. We got to understand that. But man,
it's part of the modern day NFL.
Yeah, man. There's truly the true pocket passer and just pocket passer. I'm not going to say it's died out, but it's close, because you got to be able to run a little bit here and there. You got to be able to make those plays on third down, like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5. Like, you know, I mean, when the play breaks down. So
the quarterback position is now an athlete position.
Yeah,
I mean, the athleticism at the position is as bigger as it's ever been. It's as big as it's ever been. And I think with a guy like Jaden Daniels, and I remember when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl in 2021, so they were going to face Tennessee.
Yep.
And Tennessee in 2021, they were clearly not what Detroit is this year.
Yep.
But obviously, I remember 2 things going into that game. Number one was the Titans' defensive line. I'm like, good God, they're going to maul the Bengals' offensive line. And then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, Derrick Henry's coming back.
Yep.
So, and I remember listening to Tony Pike and Mo Egger say, with Joe Burrow, I feel like the better quarterback is going to win. And because the Bengals have Joe Burrow, I think the Bengals can beat the Titans. Now, I will admit, I picked Tennessee to win that game.
Fair.
But then I saw Joe Burrow withstand 9 sacks and a whole bunch of other things. and will the Bengals to that victory. And I'm like, he's different. That's when you know he's different. And on Saturday night against Detroit, we'll get to this later on this week in our midweek show previewing this weekend's divisional round games. The Commanders are literally walking into the Lions' den.
They are.
And it might even be more than that.
It really could be. It's going to be a very fun one. It's a Saturday night game on Fox. My brother's a huge Lions fan. I hope I'm just going to put it out there. I hope the Lions win the whole thing. That's all I'm going to say.
I do too.
But it should be a great game to watch.
It should be. All right, so the other side of this is Tampa Bay, a disappointing loss for them. Their season comes to an end in the wild card round for the second time in 3 seasons. Chase, like, where do you stand right now with the Buccaneers as they head into the offseason? What's your 30,000 foot overview of their roster, their organization, Baker Mayfield? Like, where do you stand with the Buccaneers? What do they need to do to ensure they can run it back next year, make it 5 straight division titles?
They've really got a good offensive core. They do. They do. Baker Mayfield was fantastic this season. When you look at numbers, 15 picks, dude, when you're throwing 40 touchdowns, who cares? When you're throwing that many touchdowns and you're being that efficient through the air, man, there were some throws that Baker made last night that you mentioned. I mean, there were some dimes that he threw, but when you're looking at it from a bird's eye look of it, the Bucs, they've got their quarterback, their running back room. It's fine because you can go on ahead. You've got Bucky Irving, you've got Rashad White. You can mix and match and have that running back by committee. Mike Evans is just aging like fine wine. He is still playing fantastic football. Chris Godwin got hurt in week 7 this year, and that hurt. That hurt them. But
do you think if they had Godwin last night, they would have won?
Huh?
Do you think if they had Godwin last night, they would have won this game?
I think they would have been able to be more efficient on third down. So yeah, I think they could very well could have won that game. But you also talking about the emergence of Jalen McMillan. Like they've got guys that can ball. They've got a really good offense. But one of the things is, I mean, if Liam Cohen ends up leaving, how are they going to run it back offensively? Because on the defensive side of the ball, the Bucs have pieces defensively, but they just didn't. They were just not in sync. There were a lot of guys that were hurt the week before, and they were coming back. Jamel Dean didn't look the best. There was, some Todd Bowles, man. I cannot put my finger on what Todd Bowles is trying to do because he just. His clock management, game management, and everything else, it's poor. It's really poor, and that costed the Bucs the game last night, in my opinion.
Did. Yeah, weren't you screaming at your TV, take a timeout in that last possession? I mean, everybody in America was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, jeez. I mean, ever since he decided to go cover 0 against Matthew Stafford and the Rams 3 years ago in that playoff game and let Cooper Kupp go straight down the field. I have friends in Tampa Bay. I've told you this, that won Todd Bowles fired because of his in-game management. I get it. I saw it last night because, going into this game, and we talked about this, I was like, dude, Todd Bowles has won you 3 straight division titles. 2 of them have come after Tom Brady retired. There are teams who, when they move off of a legendary quarterback can only dream of that success.
That's facts. Yeah. And
yes,
I do want to bring this up. This kind of came in my mind. Let's just say chaos breaks out. And for some reason they're not going to do this. But either team's not going to do this. The Bucs fire Todd Bowles. What if the Steelers let go of Mike Tomlin? And the Bucs were like, hey, Mike Tomlin, even though Mike Tomlin can't get over the hump. We're like, Mike Tomlin.
What if I told you Mike Tomlin got his start in Tampa Bay?
Oh, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. No, I'm going right along with you.
Oh, yeah. Rejuvenation. Sometimes being in a different place helps.
And in Tampa Bay, it's a smaller market.
Yep.
Well, I mean, look, it's in terms of media, in terms of, how do I say this? The Buccaneers don't get a lot of national attention. Now, when Brady was there, it was different because Tom Brady was there.
Yeah.
But you can go to Tampa Bay and if you do well there, the fans are going to love you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they will. Like, look at Tony Dungy, look at John Gruden, look at Bruce Arians. Look, I mean, you may be onto something here, because if Todd Bowles were to, if the Buccaneers make a head coach change, to simplify it, that job is very attractive.
It is.
Because as you mentioned, look at who they have on offense. I mean, we talk about the Commanders being a wellness center for guys like Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner. Baker Mayfield's found a home in Tampa Bay, and look what he's doing.
Exactly.
And then look at Mike Evans, as you said, aging like 5-1. He still has, 5 to 7 years left in him?
Oh, 100% he does.
He's still in his prime. Okay, yeah. He's still in his prime. Bucky Irving, 1,100 yards this year. Jalen McMillan is fantastic. First playoff game last night. He had some jitters. Okay, first playoff game.
Yep.
And then look at their defense. Kalisha Cansey, Vita Vea, Levante David's still a really good linebacker. And then you've got your secondary. I thought Jamel Dean actually had an okay game last night. He made a really good play. I forget if it was in the third or fourth quarter. It was in the second half. He made a great play. It was a pass breakup. I think it was intended for McLaurin on the.
I know you're talking about
the back, the front corner of the end zone, the top of your screen. If you're watching on NBC Sunday Night Football, so I look at this team and I say to myself, should they go with an all-in approach?
Yeah, I mean, again,
don't you think they can?
They definitely can. They are obviously, like you mentioned, Tampa Bay doesn't have that much national attention on them, ever since, Tom Brady retired and everything else. But this is not a bad football team to any regards. They are if you got that right coach in there that could make some of those tweaks and say, hey, our identity is going to be stopping the run, and I'm going to bring in a bunch of guys on the back end, and not even bringing a bunch of guys on the back, because they have guys on the back end. But if you can make some minor tweaks, in some of the, in some of the scheme and coverages and everything else, and maybe bring in another guy who, can be partnered with Levante David or someone else on the back end and everything else, and have more depth, this could be a very scary Bucs team going forward, especially if Baker Mayfield continues to play at a high level with the fleet of an offense that they have.
Because here's the thing, they're going to win their division.
They should. Yeah,
should.
Exactly.
Well, I will say this. Watch out for Carolina next year.
They ended the season high.
I pray that they're on Hard Knocks during training camp next year.
I'd love to see it.
And they're one of 4 teams that can.
And look who their coach is. Look who their coach is. Dave Canales just came from Tampa.
So what you're saying is Tampa Bay can groom offensive coordinators and then let them become head coaches. Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
You know what? And this is kind of off a tangent.
Didn't Todd Monken coach in Tampa Bay at one point?
He was. Yes, he was there, I believe. Yeah. And
look what he might have his quarterback win MVP for a second straight year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick.
I'm all in on this.
Give me, let's say earlier season, but if they do a double header Monday night, give me a Bucs Panthers Monday Night Football game.
Ooh,
I'm in on that. In Carolina, I'm in on a Bucs Panthers Monday Night Football game early season next year.
You know what? We're already making schedule predictions. Okay,
I know my brain is so wired.
I see where this is going. I really do. Listen, I would be. I think. And if good Lord, if Mike McCarthy goes to New Orleans, all of a sudden the NFC South, which is I think a flyover division when it comes to the best divisions in football, all of a sudden you look and you say, the Buccaneers have a lot of good pieces offensively. Carolina's got an up and coming quarterback, and here's the thing: the NFC South used to be electrifying offensively when you had Drew Brees with New Orleans, Matt Ryan with Atlanta, Cam Newton with Carolina. Tampa Bay had Jameis Winston, who could throw for 30 touchdowns and 5,000 yards, but he also threw 30 interceptions. So there's that.
Yep.
I think when I look at Tampa Bay, I think a lot of this was me doubting Baker Mayfield going into the season. I'm like, well, they caught a lot of people by surprise last year, but now Baker's got an extension. He's expected to be good. 41 touchdowns, 15 picks. And again, as you said, if you're throwing 15 picks because you're slinging the ball and you're taking chances, I can live with that.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford had 41 touchdowns, 17 picks in 2021. You could live with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because for every mistake he made this throw that made you literally, jump out of your chair or wherever you were sitting watching the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that game was so great last night. It was so great.
It was awesome. Us fans deserve that one after the 4 games. We knew what was coming up. NBC definitely knew the game they were at.
The best part about this is you and I disagreed on who we thought was going to win the game.
We did. And it was close. It was close both ways.
It was very close. It was exactly what we said it was going to be.
Yeah, it was.
Which, and by the way, here's how good Mike Tirico is, okay? Did you hear him in his open with Chris Collinsworth? He was talking about, Dan Quinn coming over to Washington. He said that he took over a, quote, wounded franchise. Is that not the most perfect way you've ever heard someone describe prior to this season the Washington Commanders?
Like you mentioned this before, man. Tirico, and they have 60 seconds on the open, 60 seconds on camera. Him and Collinsworth are. Obviously they're pros, but man, they are. Tirico in the open's unbelievable. Like that is something that people, if you want to be a broadcaster, and trust me, I watch this too. You got to watch the Tirico open. You have to.
Forget about doing play-by-play. When you watch an open, to your point, when someone does an open, that's where your preparation, your knowledge, your wordsmithing, if that's a word, like to have a pulse on what's happening in the game within the two teams, in history and the present. 2 weeks prior to last night, he was, weaving in Jimmy Carter, who sadly, God rest his soul, just passed away, being from the state of Georgia, and they were in Washington, the nation's capital, near the White House. That's just knowing what's going on in the world.
Yeah. Got to be in tune.
His knowledge of anything is unbelievable.
Yeah.
He hit on Savannah Guthrie and Craig Melvin last night at halftime. I don't know if you saw that at halftime, and you see the relationships that NBC Sunday Night Football and the Today Show and SNL, it's a family there at NBC. It really is.
Definitely is.
And Sunday Night Football is going into its 20th season on NBC.
The amount of talk we have for this entire offseason and predictions and everything else and stories. Oh my goodness, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
This is why the NFL is so great. Next week, okay? You know what's going to be making bank next week? Uber Eats. You know why? Because you're going to see a bunch of their commercials.
Yep.
The NFL knows exactly what it's doing. And by the way, just wait till they take over New Year's Day.
Man, oh man.
And when they go to 18 games and have 2 bye weeks and they start the season a week earlier than they already do, and they're taking over Labor Day weekend and going up against college football. Good.
Oh my God. August NFL.
Yeah.
Jeez. Man. Yeah. What a time.
Get ready.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so we spend the first half of the show, more than the first half of the show, talking about Washington, Tampa Bay, but hey, when it's the best game of the weekend so far, it deserves its time. In addition to all the side tangents we went on. Okay. So let's get to the other games from this weekend, which, look, there were some blowouts, but it's not like we didn't see compelling football. For instance, is Derrick Henry the best running back of the 21st century?
He's up there.
Talk about just dropping that question on you, Chase Younts.
He's up, man. I saw that question that you sent a while ago, and I still couldn't give you a certain answer. Wow. Don't get me wrong. There have been great running backs in the 2000s, and there's so many to name. And Derrick Henry he's in that top 5, in my opinion.
Oh, sure.
21st century. He's top 5, top 3. I don't know. This is, man, what he is able to do at his size, at 6'3", 6'4", 250, 260. He is a freight train going down tracks. There's no red lights. It's all green lights. Go. It's all it is. There's no train yard. There's nothing. He is driving down that straight track, and you're not stopping him. That's all it is.
You just went full Chris Collinsworth on that prediction. I love it. By the way, if you had to guess his 40 time, what would you say it was?
Derek's? Oh, man, 4.39.
It's actually 4.54.
4.54. Okay.
Now that may have been at the combine. So what you're telling me is he's getting faster.
I mean, who knows? I mean, when he's in open field, he's
running backs. Decline in their 9th year.
Dude, I mean,
they don't.
I've never seen this before. We've never seen this before.
Look at any running back that's in the Hall of Fame, and you know what? I may still have this. Okay.
Yep.
So in the summer, I ran this. I ran this data. I got to go back and find this. I have a lot of notes here.
All right.
Let me see if I still have this. Oh shoot! I don't know if I do. Well, that's okay. Oh man, I thought I did. Well, anyway. The point is this. Okay. Running backs don't decline in year 9. You look at guys like Earl Campbell and LT and Marshall Faulk and Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and guys like that. Their 9th seasons are still great.
Yeah.
Like Derrick Henry. Here's how great he is. He's the first running back in NFL history with over 1,900 yards in 2 seasons. He's also the first running back in NFL history with both 1,500 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns in 3 different seasons. Okay? And it's almost like when he was signed by the Ravens in free agency. When the Ravens signed him, it was like, well, that makes too much sense. Like, this has to be too good to be true. No, it's not.
Nope.
Like, he has 100-plus rushing yards in each of his last 4 games. By the way, his totals in those games, 162 against Pittsburgh, 147 at Houston. By the way, those 2 games were in a span of 5 days, and they had to go on the road to Houston. He had 138 against the Browns, and then he had 188. What was it? 188 against the Steelers.
Yep.
Chase, this is against the Steelers defense. And Derrick Henry just shredded them. I mean, did you see that touchdown where he outran 6 different Steelers?
Ridiculous, man. And
this is the Pittsburgh Steelers we're talking about here.
Let's coin it both sides, man. What Derrick was able to do, Lightning McQueen, whatever you want to call him, like in the press conference. But
he is.
Man, I mean, yeah, he is. Yeah, I mean, what Derrick was able to do on that, fantastic. I mean, you've never seen a big guy have that big of breakaway speed. But then you look at it on the flip side for Pittsburgh. I mean, that first half for Pittsburgh,
awful.
I mean, I honestly don't know if I've seen. Actually, we've seen Pittsburgh play worse, believe it or not. Go back to 2020 in the wild card game against the Browns.
Yeah,
I mean, that was just a bunch. That was a bunch of turnovers. Don't get me wrong; they're still bad, but man, I mean, what they looked every bit as one of the worst football teams in the National Football League over a 10-year span. They were awful on Saturday night in the first half. Horrific.
I mean, their best play was called back by offensive pass interference.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson was doing whatever he wanted in the pocket. Derrick Henry was running all over them. I mean, that stiff arm he had on Minkah Fitzpatrick is the stuff of legend. Okay. Yeah. And here's the thing, Chase, and I was thinking about this earlier today, getting ready for this show, when I sent you the rundown excuse me one second. When I sent you the rundown of, what we were going to talk about with the Steelers. Okay. Keep in mind that Browns playoff game. The Browns did not have Kevin Stefanski that night. He had COVID-19. They also were without one of their starting offensive linemen due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Cleveland took him to the woodshed.
They did.
And by the way, let's take this further, okay?
Oh boy.
The Steelers have not won a playoff game since January of 2017.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember the exact date. I think it was January 15th of 2017.
That sounds yes.
It's in that vicinity.
Yep, January 15th.
You remember a Sunday night game? It was a Sunday night football game. It was at Kansas City.
Yeah.
They won 18-16. In fact, that game, fun fact, you want to talk about fun facts? That game was supposed to be a 1:00 game, but due to either a snow or ice storm, might have been both, in Kansas City, they moved it to 8:30. Okay. Pittsburgh wins that game without scoring a touchdown. And that was supposed to be the game where the Chiefs were going to break in. This was before they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Actually, 3 months before they drafted him. This was the game where the Chiefs were going to break through and be part of that new guard in the AFC. This was going to, Pittsburgh, who had been around a long time, but they found a way to win that game. Where has that Steelers team been? Where has that Steelers team been? The team that could it didn't matter where they were playing, when they were playing, they found a way to win. Where has that been, Chase, since that game?
Alex, it's been there in the regular season. They don't show up in the big moment, though. They don't show up in the biggest moment possible. They don't.
Like the next, okay, to that point, that's a good point there. The next year, they finished 13-3.
Yep.
That offense was ridiculously good.
Killer bees, man.
Yeah. Okay. So you lose to Jacksonville in the first round in the divisional round of the playoffs. And that's, by the way, that's the only one of their 6 straight playoff losses that was not by double digits. It was 21-0 in the first half. It was and that Jacksonville team was not great. They were good.
They were fine, yeah.
But they weren't. It's not like they were playing Mahomes and the Chiefs. Or apparently Derrick Henry and the Ravens.
Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh, they get behind the 8 ball so much because when they get in those big games, they fold. They have folded in the playoffs. They get behind. They can't score. They can't put 7 on the board. They can't move the football. They lose their identity.
Yes.
They let whoever's playing quarterback just do whatever they want.
Okay, so when you were in elementary school, when I was in elementary school and then middle school, from like 2004 to 2011,
yep,
the Steelers had players who were so committed to winning.
Oh man,
Big Ben, Hines Ward, Santonio Holmes, Heath Miller. I mean, good Lord, their defense. I mean, James Harrison, Lawrence Timmons, and Ike Taylor, and Troy Polamalu, and Deshae Townsend, and Ryan Clark, who's a fantastic analyst on ESPN.
Brett Kiesel.
My goodness. Okay, apparently I now have until 7:10 to record this, so that gives us 25 more minutes to discuss this, so that's always
all good. All good.
Yes, okay, all right. So my point is this. The Steelers now, where are they embodying the identity of physicality, toughness, run the football, stop the run, and get after the quarterback? The Steelers team since 2016, they want to be treated with royalty and glamour and prima donnas, and that's not the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers from 2004 through 2011, they wanted to beat your butts.
Yep.
They wanted to beat you into submission. Can you imagine if Dick LeBeau oversaw this defense on Saturday night, put up that effort?
Well, it's Sean. He would. I mean, yeah. Wow.
This is Dick LeBeau we're talking about here.
Yeah. All-time great. I mean, like you mentioned, Pittsburgh, like, they punch you in the mouth, and they would do it multiple ways. They'd run the football. They would throw a Big Ben. He'd be an escapability in the pocket from a big guy. They would, guys like Heath Miller, Hines Ward, Mike Wallace and stuff like that. Just tough, hard-nosed players that would make plays when they need plays to be made.
Antoine Randall L.
Yes, exactly.
Cedric Wilson.
Early Antonio Brown.
Parker. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. So it's like that. They made plays when they need to make plays, and then their defense, you don't even have to go into much detail about their defense. They if you were in their way, they were going to make you get out of the way. They're going to go through you. And that's literally what they did, I mean,
look at guys like Joey Porter and look at guys like Larry Foote, and, James Farrier, Clark Hagan, God rest his soul, Lamar Woodley. I mean, with that defense, I mean, it's just ridiculous how good they were.
It
I
is.
mean, the Steelers-Ravens games from like 2008 through 2000, there was a stretch like I think 08 through 2011. I mean, those were just smash mouth in your face. I mean, we talk about how good Mike Tirico is in the open. If you go back and you'll remember this game, 2011 Week 9, Ravens Steelers played a
Word
Sunday
for
night
word.
game, and Al Michaels in the open was like, "Welcome to the NFL's version of a back alley brawl."
Yep. Oh, dude, I remember like it was yesterday. This is a game that sells itself. It's the Ravens, it's the Steelers. Enough said on Sunday Night Football.
And you hear Chris Collinsworth talking about, you got to go to a dark place to get mentally ready for this game, and the trainer's room is busy on Mondays. I'm like, oh yeah, it is.
Man, tell you that.
Yeah, and that game. You remember who caught the game-winning touchdown that game?
Torrey Smith.
Torrey Smith. He was a speedster.
Man,
I mean, that kid, that man could fly.
He definitely could.
Okay, so speaking of the Ravens, I think what's interesting to me about Derrick Henry is his last 6 seasons. I mean, he had 378 carries in 2020. He had like 348 in 2022. He had over 300 this season. And mind you, his best season might have been 2021. He had like 220 some carries through 8 games. He was on pace to average 456 carries that season.
Insane.
He had a foot injury. And a running back has a foot injury. Like, you're not coming back from that.
No.
Who you were. Okay. Just come back stronger than you were. That's what Derrick Henry's done. And here's the best thing about this. Okay. And now, best running back of the 21st century. I mean, you grew up watching the Danny and Tomlinson. I grew up watching the Danny and Tomlinson. One of my favorite players growing up.
Yep.
I mean, I remember 2006 when he had 31 touchdowns. I remember, he had like 8 straight seasons with like ridiculous numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He no running back prior to Derrick Henry, I think, put the fear of God more in defenses than LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Maybe Adrian Peterson, but he wasn't the receiver that LT was.
Yeah.
And I say that knowing that Adrian Peterson's going to be in Canton one day.
Oh, yeah.
But here's what I love about Derrick Henry. He has completely, along with Saquon Barkley, revived the running back position.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the NFL now, you need a great quarterback, prolific number 1 wide receiver, and a prolific running back. I mean, this is the golden age of offensive NFL football.
It definitely is. I mean, they revitalized. It's the year of the revitalization for running backs was what 2024 was.
Yes. 16 running backs, Chase, had over 1,000 yards this season, most since 2012.
Man, going back to the older days.
Yes. Okay. So Steelers-Ravens, obviously, one side. By the way, the final score that you see on your screen does not do it justice.
No, not one bit.
No. Okay. This is the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night Podcast. I'm Alex Frank, otherwise known as Frankie, my stage name. He's Chase Younts, co-host, and also, as you see on Twitter, at YountsChase32. I need to put my Twitter handle in there. I'll get on that after the show. I'm at Frankie_Natty. Chase is the host of the Cut to the Chase podcast, which is a really great podcast. Anyway, we got so caught up, I forgot we were going to go next for a minute. Okay. So we talked about the Ravens and the Steelers. Okay, let me pose to you this question. So, by the way, now, we, at the time we record this, don't know what the 4th matchup is going to be on divisional playoff weekend, but I am confident that no game is going to have more anticipation than Ravens-Bills. Do you feel that same way?
No, 100%. I mean, this is what more could you ask for with Lamar, Josh Allen? And by the way, shout out to the class of 2018 for quarterbacks. It took a little bit of time for everybody in that top 10, except for Josh Rosen, to kind of get that point. But I mean, you're looking at it, man. Sam Darnold, I don't know what's gonna happen tonight. Baker Mayfield had a great season. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are battling for MVP. So fantastic work by that entire class.
Yeah, clearly there were 9 mistakes made ahead of Josh Rosen, like you thought there were. By the way, you look at the other players picked ahead of Josh Rosen that weren't quarterbacks. Okay, Denzel Ward, good career. Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
He's quietly had a good career.
Yeah.
Roquan Smith. As much as we're
Yeah.
Bengals fans, acknowledge his greatness. Mike McGlinchey.
Yeah.
By the way, he was a part of a complete turnaround of Denver's offensive line.
Definitely was.
I'm trying to remember if there was any.
Oh, not to mention a guy named Saquon Barkley.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I know. Oh.
And Josh Rosen thinks he was a mistake.
Huh.
I guess the Giants thought he was a mistake too, though.
Jeez.
I'm never gonna let him forget that.
Oh, they can't. They can't. They won't.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Yep.
Can we just give both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen the MVP?
I'd be cool with it.
Why can't we?
Co-MVP. I'd be cool with it.
Here's my thing, Chase. Okay, this is such a tough race to call for me. My vote's for Josh Allen because he's done more with less. Yes, Lamar Jackson elevates those around him, but he has all pros and Pro Bowlers on his entire offense.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen came into the season without his two best wide receivers from last year. I mean, he was playing with Doink and K, Dawson Knox, Khalil Shakir, James Cook, who was unproven coming in this year, and a Keon Coleman, and who else?
Matt Collins. Like, look, I mean, look
what he's made Matt Collins. Look what he's made Curtis Samuel into.
Yeah, I mean, what I would call it, I've said it before, and no offense to those receivers in Buffalo or anything like that, before all the changes that were made with Amari Cooper, dude, I mean, it was Josh Allen was throwing the Uber drivers. Like, he's got my vote. I mean, I know the MVP is a regular season award, but the winner of this game wins the MVP. So that's all. That's in my book there.
I see. I agree with that. Unless, like, let's say this game, which let's say both quarterbacks. I wiped my camera off there for a minute. Sorry. Let's say both quarterbacks play out of their minds.
Yeah.
How can you not give it to both?
Yeah.
Like they did it in 03 with Peyton Manning and Steve McNair. Why can't they do it again?
Who says they won't?
Yeah. But we're going to talk about that game extensively on our midweek show because, I'm going to say it right now. This has game of the decade potential.
It definitely does. It definitely does. I'm excited for it, though.
Listen, I cannot wait for that game. Sunday at 6:30, prime time. By the way, MLK Day the next day, so school's off. So, yeah. I mean, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, by the way, the Bills beating the Broncos 31-7 yesterday. Was that more that the Bills are really good, or is Denver maybe not as good as we thought they were? Because I feel like it was just a bad day at the office for the Broncos. They clearly are not quite yet at Buffalo's level.
Yeah, it started as a very good day at the office for Denver. You couldn't have asked for a better opening, burgeoning on the scene after not being in the playoffs in 9 years. You couldn't have asked for anything better to start. But yeah, I think it was just the fact that Buffalo's a better team. I mean, they are, they are, elevated by Josh Allen. Bo Nix, he played fine, but just, obviously, dude's a rookie still. They don't have a. I'm not gonna say a true number one receiver because Cortland Sutton's a very good receiver. Don't get me wrong.
He's very good. Very good.
But again, with having a rookie quarterback, and I know they have to still worry about, eating the Russ money and everything else. I mean, they're a good football team. I think that probably wasn't the draw that they wanted to get with Buffalo. But I mean, Denver's not a bad football team. Maybe they overachieved a little bit, but they're not a bad football team. It's just the fact that Buffalo's that good with some of the stuff that they're able to really come up with, especially on defense.
Buffalo's played 9 home games this year. They've scored 30-plus points in 8 of them.
Yeah. So I mean,
and here's what I love most about that game yesterday, because when Denver scored, I'm like, uh-oh. Buffalo didn't flinch. You know why? Because they could get back in the game running the ball, and then that opened up Josh Allen and hit those downfield throws. That touchdown he threw to Ty Johnson.
Yep, Ty Johnson.
On 4th and 1. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, just watch. And I'm like, that's what he's doing.
Yep.
That's Josh Allen for you.
That is.
That is the Josh Allen experience.
Sign a waiver. Sign a waiver is all I'm going to say.
Here's what I will say, too. Denver plays a third-place schedule next year. I think that's going to help them.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when they get to the playoffs, we'll see how good they are. Now, I mean, if they make the playoffs next year, but that was about Buffalo. That was about Buffalo yesterday. They're really good. I mean, they are really good. Denver, I mean, again, it's just they're not at Buffalo's level yet.
Yeah.
I still think they had a really good season. Sean Payton's put himself back on the map as a top NFL coach. Bo Nix is a top half of the league quarterback. Cortland Sutton, as we talked about, I mean he's so underrated. What he did this season, finally he has a quarterback that he's going to be able to develop a nice chemistry with. And then look at a guy like Marvin Mims.
Yeah.
And their running back room is deep. Their defense is good. Their offensive line was tremendous. So that to me was just more about Buffalo. Okay. Philly beat Green Bay 22-10 yesterday. I mean, here's the thing. First off, when Green Bay fumbled the opening kickoff, I knew the game was going to go terribly for them.
Yep.
You knew.
Oh yeah.
I mean, first off, like that atmosphere looked incredible at Lincoln Financial Field yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
However, as I'm watching that game, and I think I texted this yesterday, there is no way Philly can beat Detroit playing like that.
No
way in hell they can beat Detroit.
No. If they play like that, no, they can't. Because I don't get me wrong, Jalen Hurts first game back, few weeks, Packers defense pretty good. They are, but it's the playoffs, man. You can't afford games like that.
No.
Where you're going into the late third quarter with like 40 passing yards. You can't do it. You can't. Because if you're doing that and you're playing against Detroit in an NFC championship game on the road, best believe you're going to be down 20 plus.
Look, here's the other question. How worried are you about Jordan Love going forward?
I think Jordan Love, I know it's year 5. It's crazy to think that was year 5, but obviously year 2 as a starter. I think that's just who he is. Don't get me wrong, you look at you want to take pieces of looking at, okay, this guy kind of plays a bit like Rodgers when it comes to some of the off-platform throws and everything else. He's more like Favre if you want to compare Green Bay quarterbacks together, because, man, like he's going to turn the ball over and then he's going to make some wild throws. Like it's a balance. I don't know. Unless they can extend Toyotathon all the way throughout the season, I am a little bit concerned about Jordan Love. Not crazy concerned, but a little bit though. But again, you could make he was down his top 2 through receivers throughout the game and everything else. But man, like, yes, it was a winnable game. It was really winnable. Great quarterbacks find ways to win without if their top weapons are out. And Jordan Love yesterday looked like he looked flustered. He looked out of sync. He looked out of sorts. I don't know if it was the opening kickoff and the subsequent touchdown by Philadelphia, where Jalen Hurts had like 2 weeks to throw that ball. Yeah, really. I don't know if it was that, but I mean, he's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he was thrust into a very pressure-packed situation. Mm-hmm. I felt like last year he really kind of, in the second half and playoffs last year, he was unbelievably impressive. Maybe the expectations kind of weighed on him a little bit this year, but you got to find a way to beat elite teams. And the Packers this year against elite teams did not do well. Yeah, you mentioned it. You mentioned it on the previous shows before. They couldn't find ways. And here's the thing: like, I saw Jordan Love stand toe to toe with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia in Week 1. Yeah, and like again, yes, they were without Christian Watson. Yes, they lost Elgin Jenkins, their offensive lineman, in the game yesterday. But great teams find ways to overcome that, and unfortunately, it just to me felt like they couldn't do that yesterday. Yeah. All right. One more thing, real quick. I know you got time, but the defense helped Philadelphia to 22 points. Like you said, you have to find a way to win the game, especially if you held that Eagles offense down to 22 points. You got to find a way to win the game. Josh Jacobs had 18 carries yesterday. He should have had how many carries at least? 30. Yep. Easy. 30. Criminal. Yeah.
Criminal underusage.
Definitely was.
He could have outrun Saquon Barkley yesterday. Saquon Barkley was good. He wasn't like otherworldly.
Yeah. I mean, they butchered the game plan. And obviously it sucks when you fumble the opening kickoff.
Well, I think that can have an impact.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
So there was one other game this week. You and I were both very wrong on this game.
We were.
At least not as wrong as Rex Ryan, so there is that.
Okay.
32-12, the Texans win. Look, I mean, we'll get to it quickly. We got about 7 minutes. There's plenty of time, though.
Yeah.
That was a different Texans team. That was a team. CJ Stroud said, I'm going to put this team on my back. I'm going to will this team to victory. That broken play he made completely turned the game around for them.
Yeah, that's what Jordan Love should have been trying to do.
Yes.
In that game. And to mention, I mean, with the Texans, that's what we've expected them to do this entire season. I mean, they were a 9-5 team that won the AFC South, excuse me.
Yeah.
A few weeks before the season was even over. They had 3 weeks to kind of play that autopilot role and see how they fared up against other playoff teams. But what CJ Stroud was able to do, kind of turn back the clock to last year, played calm, under control, poised. The offensive line played very well. Joe Mixon, he really came out on a burst. He burst on the scene, which was fantastic to see for him as a former Bengal. Their defense, wow, their defense was active. Derek Stingley Jr. was fantastic. That's as advertised, 3rd overall pick.
Danielle Hunter, monster, game wrecker.
I mean, Grim Reaper, if you would. Justin Herbert, you talk about seeing ghost. Yes. I mean, that dude, he was chucking the ball all over the place. Like, dude, I don't know what's going on.
Let me ask you this. Bad game or bad sign for him and the Chargers going forward?
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a really bad game, but horrible. They've got to get a receiver. They've got to get another receiver out there on the outside. They need one horribly.
I'm not going to give Herbert a pass because he was awful on Saturday.
Terrible.
He was not good. Is he still a really good quarterback? Yes. Is he a great quarterback? At times. But what win does he have in his career that has moved that needle to great permanently? You can't.
I've never seen it.
He beat the Chiefs in 2021 week 3. I'll give him that. But, here's for me what's interesting. Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator. And the whole point of that was Herbert was going to have the ball taken out of his hands. He was going to be more efficient. He was. But in the playoffs, you need your quarterback who's big and can throw the ball a mile. And if he hasn't been doing that all season, that's the results you get.
Exactly. They didn't it's one thing to run the football, but you have to be able to open up the playbook in pieces of some of these games and not show off the big arm quarterback, but utilize it a little bit. Yes. That's where the offense becomes so dynamic.
I mean, and here's the thing too, 50 rushing yards. If you're going to be a run first team, you have 50 rushing yards the entire game.
You're cooked. You're
done.
By
the way, I saw someone say that J.K. Dobbins should be comeback player of the year. And don't get me wrong. J.K. Dobbins has had 2 season-ending injuries.
Yep.
You come back from that and you play well this season, that's great. I'm so happy for that guy.
Give him some votes, sure.
You're going to put him over Joe Burrow?
People forget about the Burrow comeback player of the year, man. They really do. They really do. They really do. And Sam Darnold, great this year. Don't get me wrong, but really?
Well, if he wins, I don't think you'd be
True.
He'd be the only other guy I'd be comfortable with him winning the award.
True. I agree there.
Good God, if they give it to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, jeez. As much as he's great. Okay. We got about 2.5 minutes left. So coming up on the midweek show, we'll talk about who has the edge between the Ravens and Bills. I got an interesting take on that game, actually. We'll talk about if the Texans can stand with the Chiefs, because you may remember that game was pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
The first time around, just 4 weeks ago. And then we'll talk about how the Detroit Lions got a great draw playing the Washington Commanders.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick, we recorded this obviously before the Monday Night Football game between Minnesota and the Rams. Best and worst matchups for Philadelphia next weekend based off of this game that, of course, we recorded before it was played.
Well, I mean, wow. I mean, the Rams, they saw him once before. I think Sean McVay would be ready for another game plan and try to, really get something established. I think their offense can move against the Philadelphia defense, but it's my question is, can they stop the Philadelphia offense? And on the flip side, though, Minnesota, they can get after, they can get after Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. They blitz all the time. Can they hold up on the back end? But then Sam Darnold against that equals pressure. That's going to be tough.
I'm going to say the Rams are the best matchup because I think their offense is not as great as, people want to think it is. I think their defense can keep them in the game, but as we saw the first time around, Saquon Barkley took over that game.
He did.
Week 12 Sunday Night Football back in Los Angeles. Minnesota would be a tough matchup for me because I think they're built in a way that can stand with Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So I think the Rams, and because think about this, Chase, the Rams traveling all the way to Philly on a short week after all they've been through with and by the way, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Southern California with those horrific wildfires. I think the Rams would be the better matchup for Philly over Minnesota. Real quick, is what's happening with Bearcats men's basketball, is this losing streak, is it salvageable? Like, is it fixable?
It is, but there's going to need to be hard conversations inside that locker room.
Okay, fair enough. Yep. This has been the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night Podcast. He is Chase Younts at YountsChase32 on Twitter. I'm Alex Frank, otherwise known as Frankie. My stage name at Frankie_Natty on Twitter. We will talk to you later this week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, to look ahead to what should be a fantastic divisional round weekend of the NFL playoffs. This is the Waitin All Day for Sunday Night Podcast.